Hey! So, let me talk to you about a few things. The biggest concept that this all started on was a question, a seemingly simple question, a question that has probably been asked, I don't know, thousands of times in the history of our world, right? And it starts with, what are the gods? What is God? What is that idea? Now, that led me on a really long search. Very, very long one. I don't even know how many years. Let's just say over 10 years. Now, trying to answer that question merely because, for a simple fact, in the creation of my own mythology, I kind of have to fucking explain what the gods are. I can't just be like, yeah, anyway, they're just there. And they have powers and shit. Like, no, it's more than that. I started that way, and then I realized I need to answer questions and stuff. That led me to what is a universe. That led me to what is the mind, which led me to what is consciousness, and which led to the idea of our nature and God's nature. Now, to me, if I could simplify it, I will say the idea is wherever you take it, seemingly. So I said, what if the universe was the pool in which God came into and made everything as such as we understand it, planets, our consciousness, all the animals and all this shit that we know in our minds, we see and perceive, even to the higher levels of what quantum physics will say, and particles and atoms and all that shit. It's all made by a god. We could say a god or a series of gods. It really depends on which way you want to go, but instead we replace them with just beings, and we ask ourselves, what is religion then? What is the idea that is spirituality as we understand it? In tune with gods, in reverence of gods, in understanding the God within us, and understanding duality, and understanding subjectivity. And I thought to myself, what if indeed God, the series of gods, begs of us transcendence in some nature, to come to his kingdom of heaven, as the Christians would say. I think the Jews as well. What if that is a process in which you are being taken to be used in such a way? The example I saw recently was one of those wasps that impregnate like caterpillars, and then out come all the larvae from that caterpillar, and it kills it in the process, and you're just helping continue some sort of line, so the beings born from you, with your devotion to God, take hold of everything that you put inside of it. Your memories, your feelings, your perceptions. Now, I divide the archetypes as the emotional states, and I say, and then the memory. The archetypes grow power from your memory, seemingly as you become yourself, you're defined by your past. The archetypes, which are the spirits, which are your emotions, take on their traits based on your past, your perceptions. I'm here because this happened, right? And that's how we become ourselves. When you get to the high enough point, and upon your own death, this higher being uses you to and extracts those emotions and stuff. Think of it like steeping in a tea, and it has what it needs. That goes on and creates the next place, which is beyond, which is, as our modern understanding would say, a dimension. Through that, the archetypes of yourself, which I call the Titans, go off and create another dimension. And in that other dimension, a new God is born. It's not God, it's just a being. But the smaller ones inside of that universe would call it a God, just like ours was. What if you could trace God's memory and realize he isn't a God at all? He's just a being like you or me, in his own understanding. Now, I'm not saying that's what this is, But that's what my mythology is telling me as I've been exploring it more, as I've been trying to tell the story of Dove and Theis and realizing it's bigger than that. And now Herias comes up. How does Herias come to be if not born in the universe? That will lead to the universe after. Now, it's very interesting in that way. But that I just wanted to get that out there and just say, like, this is kind of the idea of the mythology. But as you can kind of see, it's really born out of what are the gods? Something that's always troubled me. And what's interesting is the story of Herias, or Herias. His story is literally begun with the riddle. The riddle is, why are you here? Why are we here, right? The one that humans have been asking for since God knows when. Let me jump in real quick. The riddle meaning, what is the point of living here? What is the point of being in this world? Whoops, my shirt's a little unbuttoned. So Herias, or Herias, once that point is hit and reached, we could say, it's from there that the true journey of transcendence begins. On such a small level, on such a small scale as we could understand it, which is like human growth. Human growth into a higher version of ourselves. I always use the word Christ consciousness or a Buddhist state. You kind of understand there's more to you than that. But in that, how can you unlock some ideas that can lead to your understanding of what a true God is, or a set of gods? And to me, the reason why the stories are really important is we say, Herias is the man that it began with, the Forgotten series. And it leads to his awakening through a set of stories. In those set of stories, we begin to see that his, let's just say it like this, astral projection out into the unknown. And in this new set of realms, he sheds away all he was, becomes a spirit-like state, reborn, and through his archetypes, which, as I've explained to you, is just how I'm defining his emotions, they manifest into their own set of beings. Imagine your fear manifests in a living being. Imagine your joy in a living being. And you know what I'm saying? They manifest as beings. Those beings go off and become the Titans, which end up creating the next dimension. It was merely just an exploration for myself to say, wouldn't it be crazy if God isn't the God that we think he is? It isn't just some thing that was always there forever and ever, right? Kind of was in a way, if you understand what I mean. And he just made this, and that's all. And you got to worship him, and you can come back to his heaven that he's established. And you have a lot of sin in you because you disobeyed him, you know, all the stories. What if this God is just a being that came from another dimension, birthed onto this one, and he was the sacrificial lamb, we could say, or he was the whale in the deep ocean that died and became a life place for all the little beings on it. It's how we understand our world here. Everything's recycled, from the whale dying in the ocean to the trees dying in the forest to the planets, well, let's say their sun dying, and you know, there's a whole fucking process to that I don't want to explain because I'm not a science guy. But if you understand what I mean, nothing is wasted, everything's recycled. What if that's just an echo? What if the recycling process is merely just an echo from the original being? Meaning, our dimension that we understand here was created by a being from the previous one that finally transcended to it and died and opened up, and here we are, right? That was my thought process behind it. The mythology is an echo of this idea. Okay, now in saying that, I'm not saying that, hey, this is fucking it, man. Like, this is what we should believe is going on. I don't fucking know. But it's the long journey that I've had. It's just how I've gotten here to this point. And I really enjoy it quite a bit. And enough to say, I want to explore this concept, see what I can do with it. And see how we can begin to understand this idea. What if in answering that is transcendence? What if in transcendence is merely, just think of it like this. Think of that caterpillar that was just doing his life. He gets stabbed by something. Nasty beings grow inside of him and shoot out of his body, literally, and he dies. What the fuck was his life for? Just a sacrifice? So the question is, what is our place in this? And my thinking was, when I look at, our religion, I say, we're always trying to seek some ascension, some better version of ourselves, whether it's relinquishing ourselves to a higher God or a higher being, whether it's accepting the sin within us, whether it's trying to find some transcendent state. There's a whole bunch of different religions that have different ideas of what our ultimate goal is. But to me, I say, as I was describing before, the next dimension was created with the death of the previous ascended being. Well, how would the gods look at you in that? How would they perceive you? Are you merely a sacrificial being that helped create this next place? Were you needed to roll out the street? Were you needed to be the door holder into this place? In some way, is the kingdom of heaven merely... I always look at it like this: when the Russians were being bulldozed, in a sense, by the Germans back in World War II, and they were just tearing through, and you had this big stand where they were just tossing all their people at the Germans. They didn't even have enough weapons to sustain themselves, but they just kept throwing people at the Germans, just kept throwing them, until finally some momentum fucking changed. And from that point, we already know the rest of the history of World War II. But I see it in that sense. It's just, you're just a part of the sacrifice for the greater good. And the sacrifice to the greater good, to the next dimension, would be, in this case, Herias, who will become, let's just get it out of the way and say it now, a Jesus figure. And he becomes the sacrifice so we can have this next realm. That's his fucking job. You have to kind of die so that the next realm can be born. And that is the whole fucking point of it all. How does that mean? How would the higher beings look at you then? Is the biggest question. It could just be part of the process. What if that's you? What if the wasp that stabs the caterpillar is what you call the gods or the higher beings, just using you as need be? If you remember my last video, maybe those higher beings look at you the way you look at the electricity that runs your computer. So I'm just doing this. I don't think of your little lives inside there that create power for my computer. You're just doing your thing. And that was my biggest thing. I was like, I kind of really want to take this idea and create this lore that this is just a natural process. You can look at it as evil. You can look at it as good. You can look at it as exaltation, or you can look at it as damnation, whatever it is. But these gods that call to you and seek of you and want you to do things are trying to birth themselves in you to create the process going forward. We've kind of weirdly always understood that, if I connect it with the lore, by saying, gods gain power by worship, and gods become forgotten if you stop worshiping them. Think of the Celtic gods. They grow small and they turn to fairies, as we understand them. What if there's hundreds of different beings doing this within ourselves? And our emotions are like capturing devices, as long as we put some memory in there, to allow it to be seasoned, so when it goes to this next realm, they're used as like spices on food. They're used as sources of power. That source of power helps create the foundation of the next realm, so that you can make your own Adam and Eve. You can make your own two beginning beings to which it goes forth. And this life is just a long natural process in which we continue to live. Realms, dimensions, kingdoms of heaven, nirvana, or whatever the fucking every story says that some other place is. That's all it is. It's just ascension through a natural process. And you're taking part in this big thing. That's it. Like I said, though, I'm not like And by the way, like this is what I think it is, and so should you. Again, it's just me creating, it's a thought experiment on what if it's this. And now let's make our mythology. Because through my entire journey, I've been searching and searching and trying to create a sense of myself, a sense of the world around me, and a sense of my own mythology, which is a representation of that, but also a series of stories that within inside of it, on my journey, I've been finding all these stories of culture and myth have some sort of negative truth in it. I just so happen to gather them up in such a way where this is how I'm seeing it. What if the gods are not the gods? They're just dudes, I guess, on their level. And they're doing a process that's happening. Does that wasp think he's better than the caterpillar that he impregnated? I don't know. I doubt it. Maybe. I don't think they have consciousness like that, but you know what I mean. What does he think about us as humans? Look what we fucking do. Look at the weird virus that we are. And so it's like, what is a god then? It's just something I can't understand. Remember I gave you that example. In my mythology, I made this world called Yuandra. It's a whole planet. Animals and people and shit on it. If I just started speaking to one of the characters, if he was given consciousness, he wouldn't be like, yeah, he's just a guy wearing a cardigan in his office. You know, like, no, he would think it's like, this is God talking to me, telling me to do things literally. He wants me to do this. And he doesn't see that it's just a story. Do you know what I mean? Like, wouldn't he think that, he or she, that I chose? I want to pick this character and I'm going to tell you what to do. He's going to think God's telling me to do something. What if that's you too? Being above you, some dude in a cardigan like me going like, I don't know what to do with my characters. He needs to further the plot. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know that. I don't know it either. But that's why I wanted to explore it in this kind of meta sense. Like, take it with what you know. And this is kind of what the story's become for me. And here we are now, you know? Now, that's that. And I'm going to leave it there. We'll see, though. But anyway, that's that. And I'm going. We'll see you in the next one.